In this video, we open with a chilling case, one that begins with the sudden vanishing of a young woman and gradually unfolds into a story of deception, control, and a brutal, calculated murder. Search teams and volunteers. Those two words are often paired in true crime investigations. And here, too, they play a central role. Among those volunteers was a young woman named Anna. Alongside others, she scoured a wide, barren stretch of land in Mari, determined to find answers. The landscape was harsh, an endless expanse of dry ground, with little more than scattered twigs, brittle shrubs, and an occasional tree far in the distance, offering the slightest patch of shade. It was June, and the sun beat mercilessly down on the searchers as they poked the cracked earth with sticks, hoping to uncover what was hidden. Anna reached a particular tree, tangled with branches and dry twigs. But this tree carried an ominous difference. Witnesses later recalled seeing a man there, nervously hauling bundles of thorny branches at an odd hour. As Anna investigated, the wind shifted. What drifted toward her made her stop cold, the unmistakable stench of decay. Calling over her partner, she tried to steady herself. Moments later, the grim discovery was confirmed. Beneath the heap of branches lay the body of a woman, so badly injured that even her fingerprints could not be used to identify her. That woman was Anastasia Patricia Rubinska. Born in Poland in 1996, she was described by her brother, Adrienne, as ambitious and full of dreams. She longed to see the world and once dreamed of gracing the runway as a model. Though her path was not easy, she tried relentlessly to make it work. She completed high school, attended beauty school in Poland, and while there, began landing small modeling jobs, small glimpses of the life she wanted. Later, she worked at five-star hotels and resorts abroad, jobs that required her to travel, something that filled her with joy. Her father, Andrei, remembered her as kind, outgoing, and perhaps fatally, too trusting. She believed people were good, a trait that endeared her to many, but also left her dangerously vulnerable. As a teenager, Anastasia had her rebellious streak, enough to worry her parents, but never enough to dull her bright spirit. During those years, she also met Mikhail, the boy who would grow into her partner of 13 years. They dreamed together of traveling the globe, building a life of adventure side by side. Marriage was on the horizon, though they had not yet decided when. By May of 2023, the couple made a bold choice. They moved to Greece, ready to begin a new chapter. They settled on the island of Kos, taking jobs at a luxury hotel in the tourist town of Marmari. Anastasia worked as a hostess in the hotel's dining area, a position she had held for just a month before tragedy struck. On June 12, 2023, Anastasia began her evening shift. She put on her uniform and reported to the kitchen, though during her shift she badly burned her hand. In pain, and without having eaten, she declined food when Mikhail urged her, instead deciding she wanted a drink to unwind after work. The plan was simple. She would finish her shift, grab a quick drink, and then meet Mikhail at a nearby bar for a date. But that evening didn't go as expected. While still at work, Mikhail received messages from Anastasia. She explained where she was, what she was doing, and eventually mentioned she was drinking with someone else. By 10:30 p.m., she called him, asking him to come get her because she felt unsafe. Mikhail, still stuck at work, was desperate to reach her, but before he could, someone else offered her a ride home on a motorbike. When he learned of this, he panicked, his instincts warning him of the danger. He pleaded with her not to go with a stranger. But Anastasia, kind and trusting to the end, reassured him. Minutes later, her texts grew more unsettling. She sent him not one, not two, but 3 different locations in rapid succession, before suddenly going silent. No more calls, no more texts. Mikhail, terrified, contacted police and alerted her family back in Poland. Something was terribly wrong. Authorities quickly began their search. Surveillance cameras revealed Anastasia at a grocery store, sitting near the fence, eating snacks and sipping wine. At first, she was alone, but soon after, the footage captured her joined by several men, 5 in total, who appeared to be locals. Witnesses also confirmed seeing them together that night, laughing, drinking, seemingly having fun. But by 10:30, Anastasia's messages told a darker story. She was drunk, frightened, and pleading for Mikhail to come. The next images from CCTV chilled investigators. Anastasia climbing onto the back of a motorbike, driven by one of those men. The men were later identified as migrants from Bangladesh and Pakistan, all in the country illegally. One in particular stood out. Witnesses named him as Salahuddin S. from Bangladesh. He had been living on coast for years, once working in construction, but recently unemployed. Even worse, his record revealed a long history of crime. Though details remained scarce, one thing became clear. This was not a man to be trusted. And he was the last person seen with Anastasia. So why did Salahuddin approach Anastasia that night? Did the other men play any part in her disappearance? And most importantly, where was Anastasia now? Those were the pressing questions investigators needed answers to. Very quickly, the 5 men, including Salahuddin, became their prime focus. After all, these were the last people seen with Anastasia. Fortunately for police, tracking them down wasn't difficult. Within hours, all 5 were in custody, ready to be questioned. From the outset, detectives suspected foul play. Seeing the men in person only deepened that suspicion. When asked directly if they had been with Anastasia on the evening of June 12th, the men admitted they had. They claimed Anastasia was clearly drunk, disoriented, and that, out of kindness, they had helped her get home safely, then left her there unharmed. But something didn't add up. If that were true, Mikhail would never have reported her missing in the first place. The reality was undeniable. Anastasia had not returned home. What disturbed police even more were visible injuries on the men. Salahuddin had cuts and scratches on his face and arms. Another had a noticeable mark across his nose. To investigators, the meaning was clear. There had been a struggle. The men, however, brushed it off, insisting the wounds were old, unrelated accidents. But the officers were not convinced. Here was the picture. 5 men were last seen with Anastasia. She left with one of them on a motorbike. Now 2 of those men bore fresh signs of a fight. The conclusion seemed obvious. Yet suspicion alone wasn't enough. Detectives needed hard evidence before making an arrest. Before releasing the men, they took DNA samples, determined to keep building their case. Meanwhile, Anastasia's family and friends were frantic. She had barely begun her new life in Greece, and now she was gone. For her loved ones, the agony was amplified by distance. They were in Poland, powerless to search, unable to reach her. On the ground in Kos, police and volunteers carried out an exhaustive hunt. Dogs were deployed, helicopters scanned overhead, and every lead was followed. Days passed with no sign of Anastasia. Then came the first breakthrough. Investigators traced her phone. Data showed it remained active until 11:30 p.m. the night she vanished, before abruptly going dark. The last signal placed her roughly 5 kilometers from the home she shared with Mikhail. That clue, however, only deepened the mystery. Soon after, a grim discovery was made. Inside an abandoned building near Marmari, searchers found a phone. It was Anastasia's, but it had been wiped clean, SIM card removed, GPS disabled, all files erased. The erasure wasn't just chilling, it was deliberate. Whoever had her phone wanted her trail to vanish. Despite this setback, the search continued. For 6 long days, volunteers combed the island, refusing to give up hope. Then, on June 18th, in the Tagaki area, a stretch of salt marshes and open fields, the nightmare ended. Volunteer Anna, the same woman who had been among the first to search, stumbled upon a suspicious pile of straw beneath a large tree. Prodding it with her cane, she sensed something was terribly wrong. Beneath the straw, a plastic bag emerged. She called for help. What came next horrified everyone. Inside the bag lay the naked body of a woman. It was unmistakably a murder victim. The brutality was staggering. Her body had been mutilated so severely that even her fingerprints were destroyed, deliberately erased to prevent identification. It was Anastasia, Her bright young life, her dreams of travel and love, had ended in unimaginable violence. She had fought, suffered, and was ultimately silenced in the most brutal way. For her family, the news was crushing. She had left home to begin a new chapter, only to meet an end no parent could bear to imagine. Yet amid the grief came progress. Anastasia's case was no longer a missing persons investigation. It was now a homicide. With her body recovered, investigators finally had evidence strong enough to pursue justice. And then came the revelation that shattered any remaining doubt. The spot where Anastasia's body was found, barely 1 kilometer from the home of Salahodin. At once, suspicion solidified into certainty. Police moved swiftly, arresting Salahodin on suspicion of murder. His behavior followed a familiar pattern. At first, he had claimed to be a good Samaritan, helping a drunken woman home. Now, confronted with mounting evidence, he changed his story. This time, he admitted Anastasia had come to his apartment, insisting they had spent time together. Yet he still denied any involvement in her death. But the walls were closing in. A search of his apartment unearthed damning evidence: strands of blonde hair, a blouse stained with red, and an orange sweatshirt. Tests confirmed the truth. The DNA matched Anastasia. The violence she endured became clear. The cuts and scratches on Salahodin's body, the injuries on his associate's face, they were marks of Anastasia's desperate struggle for life. And if anyone still doubted his guilt, what investigators discovered next would erase all uncertainty. The search history on Salahodin's phone, which investigators seized after his arrest, sent chills through the police. On it, Salahodin had looked up disturbing things like how to delete data from a phone, how to mislead investigators, and even how to make it impossible to identify a body. Searches like these painted a clear picture. This man was preparing to cover up a crime. But that wasn't all. When officers searched Salahodin's room, they discovered a plane ticket to Italy. He was scheduled to leave the very same day he was arrested. He hadn't told his friends, his roommates, or anyone. If not for the arrest, he might have slipped away undetected. When brought before the court, Salahodin pleaded not guilty. The prosecution, however, argued that he had lured Anastasia into his home and subjected her to unimaginable torture. Scratches found on another suspect's nose suggested that others were present that night, and that Anastasia fought desperately for her life. Despite her bravery, she was ultimately overpowered. Her body was later discovered dumped near Tagaki Beach, in an area far from the safety of the city, left exposed to animals. On December 6, 2024, Salahodin was convicted of manslaughter with intent and sentenced to life imprisonment. For Anastasia's family, the verdict was bittersweet. It brought some sense of justice, but nothing could ever bring Anastasia back. Her father, Andre, told reporters, "This punishment will not bring Anastasia back, but he got what he deserved. He should never get out of jail or hurt anyone again." Her brother Adrian spoke with raw pain, at one point asking to be left alone with the man who had killed his sister for 10 minutes so he could, as he put it, finish him. His words, though shocking, revealed the depth of grief and rage the family carried. The death and disappearance of Anastasia sparked outrage across the world. Headlines ran for weeks, questioning how a man with a history of crime was free to walk the streets of a tourist city. Women everywhere expressed fear for their safety, realizing how easily what happened to Anastasia could happen to anyone. To this day, Salahodin is the only person who has been convicted in relation to Anastasia's murder. Questions remain about whether others who were allegedly involved were ever brought to justice, or if they escaped accountability altogether. For Anastasia's loved ones, the loss was devastating. She was only 27 years old, with so much of life still ahead. On the night she vanished, she had only wanted to relax with a drink after a long, exhausting day at work. She had no enemies, no hidden troubles, just the simple misfortune of crossing paths with the wrong person. Her story is a painful reminder of how quickly a normal night can turn into tragedy. Anastasia's life ended in violence, but her memory lives on in the fight for safety and justice. If this case struck a chord with you, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more true crime documentaries. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective matters. Until next time, stay aware and stay safe.